Today we're just going to tie up a Mayfly Nymph pattern. Most Mayfly Nymphs look pretty much the same in terms of their pattern. I'm tying this on a nymph hook. It's a size 14. I'm using some GSP gel spun thread just so that I'm leaving less of a footprint. It's a bigger size hook, so I'm not too worried about bulk or buildup. But in this case, we are tying on some pretty bulky materials, so I do want to kind of hedge my bets a little bit and keep it a little thinner. So I'm just going to take my thread back down to where the barb of the hook is. And I'm going to bring it back forward before we tie in our first material. For the tail, I'm just going to use a marabou feather. This is a grizzly burnt orange. Just going to kind of stroke it back so I begin to get that nice kind of bulky tail. I don't need it to be too long. I'm going to tie that on my side of the hook, let my thread kind of pull it over the top a little bit. I'm just going to take that first wrap or two to kind of secure it in place and take a look and see where my length is. I want that to be a little bit shorter, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab on the front end of this and pull it backwards a little bit. That's going to do me right there. We'll just go ahead and take a few more thread wraps here now to kind of secure that in place. And wrap forward. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut off that excess balance of marabou here. Get it out of my way. Marabou sometimes can be all over the place, get in your way while you're tying, so I want to just kind of get that out of the way. I'm going to just clean up those butt ends a little bit, and then I'm going to swing on back here. And I'm going to kind of make sure I've got those fibers kind of pulled up on the top of the hook shank here as I secure it backwards. See, I just have that kind of clamped in my fingers. The tail's sort of short, so I may not be able to do that all the way back. That's going to do us pretty good right about there. And then I'll just move my way back up forward a little bit. So next we're going to tie in our ribbing material. I'm just going to use some brown LifeFlex here. It's a really stretchy material, presuming I can catch it. And then I'm also going to turn to some yarn. And I've thinned this out a bit. I'm using a burnt orange so it kind of matches that tail a little bit. We'll go ahead and tie this in as well. And that's going to be our abdomen. So the LifeFlex is going to be our rib. Our yarn is going to be our abdomen. Because I've thinned that yarn out, I've untwisted it and just taken a strand so it's not quite as thick. You want to be a little bit careful in pulling on it because it'll just come right apart on you. So I'm just going to secure both of these back down to the base of the tail. And then since I'm using GSP, I'm going to take some pretty firm wraps moving back up as I secure this in place. That's going to help us build a small taper. I'm going to go ahead and just chop this out. It's just the butt ends of our yarn there. And I'm just going to clean my front end up. I'm leaving quite a bit of space up here because we're going to have the thorax there with the traditional wing case and legs. So I've got a lot of material still to add on here, so I don't want to get too thick as I move up towards the eye. So with those materials in place, we'll go ahead and start with our yarn. It's going to try to avoid the hook point just so that I don't weaken this yarn any further than it already is. Get that first wrap right around the base of the tail. And when you pull this thread apart like I have here, or this yarn, I may have said thread. I never misspeak. When you pull it apart like I've done here, you'll get these little fibers that kind of come out. And I like to leave them just kind of in place, unless there are any crazy ones. They just help make this a little bit buggier, and if you watch my videos, you know I like buggy. I'm just taking touching wraps, kind of moving up. I've already pre-built some of that taper in. As I get up a little bit further towards the eye of the hook, I may take a couple of wraps over top of each other just to emphasize that taper a little bit. So now that I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and secure that in place. Let my LifeFlex come along with me if it wants to. We'll be right back with you in just a moment, buddy. So I've got that yarn secured down, tied over it a little bit. I'll turn my vise a little bit. I may move things out of focus a little bit, but that just gives me closer access to where I've tied that in, so I can clip off the excess. Then I'll go ahead and turn my vise back. And I'm going to grab my LifeFlex. Nice thing about it, again, it's elastic, so I'm just going to stretch it pretty tight as I move up. And it's going to create a pretty obvious rib here. I want that yarn to show through, so I don't want to take too close of wraps. But try to make them as close to even as you possibly can. Go ahead and secure that down. A couple of wraps on either side. Once again, we'll go ahead and turn our hook a little bit and give this a good stretch when I cut it, and that will just, the elasticity will make that suck right back down into those wraps, not leave anything behind. So for the wing case, we're going to use a really cool feather, one that I really like. It's the Golden Pheasant Tail. And I've gone ahead and taken some fibers out of that. I want to take a pretty good clump of them. I underestimate the size I need this wing case to be all the time, so I've learned to kind of get what I think I need and then take a little bit more. Primarily I want to keep this over the top of the hook. I'm just going to draw those fibers back just so I don't need to cut them off, and then I'm just going to focus on kind of wiggling that back and forth, keeping it on top of the shank of the hook. For dubbing, I'm just going to use, again, sticking with that burnt orange kind of theme that we've got going. I've got a burnt orange awesome possum, kind of buggy, kind of like rabbit. Go ahead and get that dubbed onto our thread here. We're going to have to go back for a few helpings of this, but my first few wraps I want to tighten that a little bit. Come back onto that wing case there. And then I'll just go back to my box of dubbing, and I grab myself a little bit more. I'll go ahead and dub on this next amount here. Probably pay for saying this, but I think that this would probably be enough to get us done. Notice that I'm leaving some space there behind the eye of the hook. We're probably at least one hook eye back, but we're building up a nice beefy thorax here. If you want, you can kind of stroke some of those fibers back that are sticking forward. Just a little bit less cleanup when you're done. And we're left with a really nice thorax that stands out. It's obvious. For the legs, I'm turning to a partridge feather. This has been dyed to a sunburst yellow. I'm going to go ahead, you can see I've already clipped the center out of that and removed the lower part of the fibers there. I'm going to just have this straddle kind of the top of the hook here, and then I'm going to kind of clamp that down with my fingers. I'm going to take kind of a loose wrap over the top of this, kind of lassoing it, and not pulling tight until I'm pulling towards myself. Take my second wrap and I'll go a little bit tighter. You can see, hopefully, that we've got our legs there. Usually I use this handle to either to shorten them a little bit. In this case, I've got them about where I want them, so I'm not going to shorten them. We're just going to go ahead and focus more on getting them secured down. And with those down, I'll just come on in with my scissors and we'll cut that handle that we just talked about off. I'm just going to move right on up to the front, clean off a little bit where we just cut those feathers off. Come right on back down. We'll take our wing case here, and that's going to help separate those legs. Go ahead and take a wrap or two to secure that down. Come in once more with our scissors, cut off the butt ends of our golden pheasant tail. And then we'll just clean up with our thread. Create a bit of a head, but not too thick of one. Give myself a little bit of extra thread so we can whip finish, and grab our whip finishing tool and take the first couple of wraps right behind the eye. The bulk of the wraps I want to go move back towards that wing case, so our head is a little bit tapered, going thicker as it moves back. Just like that. That's not going anywhere. Grab our thread cutter. With that, there you go. A great, just basic Mayfly nymph pattern. It's got all the characteristics with the tail and the really slim body that's ribbed, legs, and a wing case. You can vary this up, which I've done. I saw the pattern elsewhere. I think tied with almost a white thread and almost a black flex rib for the ribbing. I've just kind of changed it up a little bit to make it a little darker to match the mayflies that I have around here in my waters with the burnt orange. Anyway, throw a hook in your vise. Give this one a shot.